corner of empire, from Malta to Singapore. Once the censors were in position, instructions had told them to send a message to London reading, "Fixity London, fixed." The system was up. At midnight on the 2nd of August, 1914, a global system of interception had been instituted. Known as censorship, its aim was to prevent intelligence being conveyed to the enemy and to cut off the enemy's correspondence with his agents. Britain was taking advantage of its control of much of the international telegraph infrastructure to create the first global communications surveillance system, from Cairo to Cape Town, from Gibraltar to Zanzibar. 50,000 messages would pass through the hands of 180 censors at UK offices alone every single day. Another 400 worked in 120 stations overseas. In all, 80 million messages would be subject to censorship during the war. Spy fever had gripped the country as war approached. This had been fueled by lurid tales from novelists and newspapers suggesting German agents were lurking undercover in every port and village, secretly conveying vital information back to the fatherland that might cost Britain victory. The fears led to the creation of MI5 to catch German spies at home and MI6 to make sure the favor was being returned. It was hoped that the censorship of telegraph cables would help catch those largely non-existent agents. And some men would meet their deaths, blindfolded and shot in the moat of the Tower of London, based on the letters and telegrams that were intercepted. The impetus of war and the fear of the unknown would lead to intelligence collection on an industrial scale. An army of vans pulled up outside Strand House in London and unloaded bags of international mail onto trolleys. Bulk intercept in the pre-computer age was low-tech and laborious. The building was damp, cold, poorly ventilated and cramped, declassified files record with some sadness, and a full-time nurse was on duty to limit the high sickness and absence rates. The task of reading other people's mail was so vast that it spilled out of Strand House and into even the new Science Museum in South Kensington. At its peak, 375,517 letters were censored in a single day. At the end of the war, it was reckoned that 630 million letters had passed through the system, with 1.3 million of them stopped for further checks. How were these selected? Letters to and from certain addresses and names on a blacklist were intercepted, the most sensitive being sent straight to MI5. There was mission creep as the system expanded from looking for German agents to keeping track of anarchists, finding obscene literature, and even information on political matters from well-informed private individuals. Members of Parliament could have their posts stopped, since discontented soldiers at the front frequently communicated their concerns and supposedly sensitive information by letter. This was all about international mail. There were trials of blanket interception of domestic letters as part of the pursuit of spy rings, but installing censors at every local post office would be too obvious and generate too much material to process. The technology did not yet exist to facilitate such an ambition. The latest piece of communications equipment, the telephone, added a new complication. Phoning Europe required permission from the cable censor's office. In naval towns like Sheerness, Devonport, and Harwich, all domestic calls were listened to and transcribed in the hunt for enemy agents. A single line in the official report summarizes the results. Nothing of any value was discovered. Intercepting mail with Germany was fair game, but what about neutral countries? In May 1915, a warrant was signed for the interception of all mail coming from or heading to America. A whole new office in Liverpool was opened to cope with the volume, and by the end of the war, America accounted for 10 times as much material as any other neutral country, and well over half the total. Britain was learning that reading someone's